Hey guys, it's Alex. Good to be back. I've got Brian here with me. I'm fixing my lighting situation as we speak. Hopefully, I don't look too washed out, but good to be back, guys. Good to see you on here. Um, Let me know as you're coming on what market you're in, where you're from. And most importantly, today we're talking about real estate roadblocks. So bring your roadblocks. We want to talk about them. We want to crush them. We want to go over them. But I've got Brian Haskins here with me. We're excited here to be with you guys. Awesome to be able to spend this type of time with you and give you some great value just from our experience being in the business and everything. So, man, how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks since we were able to do these consistently. I know it's summertime, people get busy, so I'm glad to.
Well, it's mainly my fault. I was out on a boat.
Yeah.
I was doing the cruising thing with the family. It was really awesome. I was trying to figure out, hey, man, I really want to do this while I'm on the cruise. It would be a lot of fun, but the Wi-Fi signal just is not up to par on what you need to do a quality broadcast and stuff like that. So, but we're back. It is the summer. We're still keeping this going. I'm getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of good feeling that this is something that people like, something that people want, and we're going to keep delivering it for sure. So today, guys, is overcoming your real estate roadblocks. We're going to talk about this. We might break this down in a little bit of a series, like, okay, so this is kind of a marketing roadblock, or from a funding roadblock, or getting started roadblock, things like that. So today we're actually going to talk about the main focus will be on marketing, the marketing roadblocks that you guys might be facing. So as you are coming on the line, let us know what your roadblocks are so we can address them. Maybe it's something we're not even thinking about, and maybe it's something that somebody else will be able to benefit from. So we'll get going with that. So when you talk about roadblocks, I mean, we could kind of just preface this with roadblocks in general. And Brian, you have extensive experience with other real estate investors that are just getting started in the business, and also people that are seasoned. What would you say are some of the biggest roadblocks that you're seeing that people face?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked this, because here's the thing. What we want to do with you guys is we want to make sure that we're giving you the most value possible. So if there's something in your business that's holding you back from moving forward, we want to share our personal experience. We do coaching, we mentor a lot of people. So we kind of see firsthand a lot of the different roadblocks that hold people back. And our goal is to help people kind of overcome that. So we want to do that for you guys on these calls. But some of the main roadblocks that I see a lot, number one is essentially when it comes to marketing, people don't necessarily know what marketing to do. I mean, obviously we know the real estate market is always changing. There's a lot of competition in today's market, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's weeding out a lot of the stuff out there that, maybe there is a lot of competition on. So number one, the biggest roadblock for most people when it comes to marketing is understanding what marketing they should be doing, especially in today's market. And, that's a huge one. Now, another roadblock, which is something we're going to talk about probably in another video, is ultimately revolving around buyers. What to do whenever you get a property under contract, and what's kind of the next step. How do you find that buyer? How do you find a good buyer? How do you find someone who's going to be able to close on those properties? Those are a lot of things that, from my personal experience, I know holds a lot of people back from taking action. Another big one is funding. You talked a little bit about funding earlier. That's something that holds a lot of new investors back, because they think that before they can get started in real estate, they have to have funding lined up and things like that. We do a lot of deals without funding. So, that's definitely something that is not necessarily, a deal breaker for a lot of people. And then another big roadblock that I hear from a lot of people is just having, a clear action plan on knowing exactly what to do. I mean, there's just so much information out there. There's blogs, there's podcasts.
Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you hear so many different things that say, all right, well, this is what I need to do. Well, then tomorrow you hear something that contradicts that. So having a very clear action plan and knowing what to do, those are kind of the main four roadblocks that I find from talking to a lot of investors. So we're curious to hear if those are the same things that you guys think about, or if you have other roadblocks. So those are the things that we want to talk about over the next couple of weeks with you.
Yeah. So number one, if you guys are here, I see more people coming on the line here. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know you're here. Also, if you're on my page, Alex Youngblood, go ahead and share this broadcast. That would just be awesome. We get a lot more people on. and we'll get more information from more people, and then we'll be able to talk about more things, and that's just advantageous for everybody. So I appreciate those thumbs up and shares, and we'll be talking about some stuff in the future too, about maybe some kind of a contest for whoever shares and likes, and we'll select from somebody and give something cool away. So we'll talk about that too. So if you guys are here, share your roadblocks. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about marketing roadblocks right now. From what I see, I mean, we all got to start somewhere, and marketing is the big thing that people are, they hear marketing and they get scared, right? Or they're like, oh man, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started, or man, it's going to be too expensive, or how's that all work, right? Well, let's try to break this down into something that's very, very simple. So number one, you have to know where you're going to market, right? So let's talk about this from a marketing standpoint. Where are you going to market? So if you're not careful, you can approach this thing like, wow, looking at an entire county and looking at the county, and you're like, man, well, where do I get started? There's so many people. There's hundreds of thousands of people in this county. I have no idea how I'm going to reach everybody, right? I like to do things to where I try to break it down or hone in on a smaller level, because it makes it so much more manageable, right? So a way to do that, or to identify where you're trying to go, is handy dandy list source. We talk about it all the time, Brian, right? I mean, we could go into list source, and for free, absolutely FREE free, I can go into list source and I can find all the zip codes that are active, and I can see exactly how many cash transactions or investor transactions are going on within that county. And then I could say, okay, well, these are the top 5 zip codes. So now I can hone in on that and kind of eliminate all the clutter of all these other zip codes that could be, you thinking you got to try to reach everybody, and hone in on those areas where there's investor activity. So go where the market wants you to go. So that's one way that you can really identify where you want to start targeting. And that's one of the things that actually the first things that we deal with when we're dealing with our implementation students is finding out where to go. So that's a huge part of it, wouldn't you say, Brian?
Absolutely. Here's kind of the analogy that I like to use. If business 101, ultimately you need to know what your customers want, or first of all, know who your customers are, know Absolutely. What they want, and then to be successful in business, all you have to do is give them what they want. So you can apply that to real estate as well. And your customer is going to be the buyer, the people that you're wanting to sell your properties to. If you want to be successful, you just need to know kind of what they're looking for, where they're buying properties. It's going to be really tough to sell a house, across town to an investor that doesn't invest over there. So why focus all your energy in, something like that, whereas you can pinpoint specifically where buyers are actively buying. And, if you're just like you said, if you want to really hone in on an area and simplify the whole thing for yourself, it's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of time if you focus on the really hot areas. And you may know where they're at, you may not, and a little bit of research will definitely go a long way. And
yeah. I mean, it's right there. The information is right there. So, I mean, obviously we can't do a screen share here, so we can't show you that kind of exactly how to, step-by-step do it. But all you're going to do is go into list source, go to the absentee owners by checking in the, I think it's like in the tab all the way over to the right. Yeah, the options. That's it, right? Go into our options, and you can pull the absentees, and then you can look under the last market sale date, and you can see people within the last 6 months, go up to a year, and then pull that. And then you simply go in to buy that list after you might go in and sort some of your criteria, like single family residence and maybe some values and things like that. We really detail this when we're working with our students. But when you go in and do that, then you can pull a list of like going to you almost act like you're going to purchase the list, and then you go in and you can see that specific criteria of sorting it, and it'll show you all the activity of all those zip codes, and you can check those out and see which one has the most activity. And then you can choose to say, okay, I'm going to mail these, I'm going to cold call these, I'm going to do I'm going to focus on this area with in probates, whatever you're going to do, right? You can focus on it from that point once you know where you want to start targeting. So that's number one. Where do I invest? That's a big roadblock people have. They don't know where to start. So if this resonates with you, give us a thumbs up. I see a lot more people on the line here. So let us know as well. Let us know what your roadblocks are. Type those in so we can address them as we go throughout this call here. But where to start marketing? That's number one. So number two would be who, right? So just like Brian was saying, you got to know your customer, right? Where are they? Who are they? That kind of thing. Number two, who are they? Who is it that we need to be targeting in our marketing, right? So the worst thing you can do is just go to a list provider and buy this big old list of everybody on it that you think is an absentee or a free and clear or has equity or whatever it is, and then just blast absolutely everybody, right? That's the worst thing you can do. Why would you not narrow down your built people that have older properties, right? Why would you not narrow down maybe even bedrooms and baths if you took a look at that? And why would you not narrow down different property types? You know, you're not going to target you're not going to target townhouses if they're not selling in particular markets. So you can figure all that out by going in and looking in that. And we actually refer to that as your property avatar. And again, that's another marketing term. You know, you have to know who your avatar is before you can really take action on that. So that's another thing we cover with our students, going and figure out what that avatar is in your market so then you know where to target. So speaking about the avatar, Brian, what would you say are some of the key things regarding the avatar that we want to look for?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like you said, with the property avatar, that's going to tell you who your best buyers are. You know, you want to, like you said, find out who the customers are and give them what they want. So whenever you're looking at that property avatar, some major things you want to look for is, you know, like type property. So if they are buying like, let's say maybe 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom properties, you know, you don't want to target 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom properties because that might not be a good fit. If they're targeting a specific, you know, couple of zip codes in your area, you know, you don't want to target across town and only have properties in that area. So it's little things like that I would say really kind of help narrow it down. Like you also mentioned, year of the property built. That's a big one. Property type, you know, typically in a market, you know, single family residence is going to be the biggest one. You also can do something like multifamily. So in my area, there's a lot of multifamily houses. Now, we don't sell a whole lot of condos here or apartments or things like that. So for those, I eliminate those from my market. So those are things that you can kind of use to narrow it down based off of what their criteria is that you found, you know, whether you purchase that list or if you do some research in your tax records or however you kind of narrow that information down for your buyers. But you want to essentially try to get as close to what they're looking for as possible whenever you're building out your list, because it's going to save you a lot of money whenever you're creating that list. Plus, it's going to save you a lot of money whenever you're doing the mailers, because you're not targeting people that are just not going to call you back. Or if they do call you back, you're not going to have a buyer for that property.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really huge because you're now taking your efforts and focusing them where they need to be rather than being spread out all over town. So it's really important to know what that avatar is, and it gives you confidence too. You're like, oh, what am I going to do if I get this weird horse farm out in the middle of Timbuktu? You know, right. Somebody wants to sell. It's not really something that's what you would term, you know, a hot property. So you really got to hone in on that so that you know exactly what properties to target. And you can do that. And a great list, if you're just trying to figure this out, is to identify that property avatar, number one, and then just take that property avatar and hit everybody that fits that property avatar with equity. And that's a really quick, simple way that we can give you on this call here to tell you if you're looking to get started with something, just do that. And you should have some pretty good success with that. And then obviously from there, you can nick down if you wanted to, you know, with like code violations and tax and all that kind of thing. But, you know, the main thing is just to get it started and get it rolling. So, all right. So we've covered where should I market, right? Number two, we cover who should we market to? And then number three is going to be the what, right? What do I market? So if you are appreciating this information, give us that thumbs up and the like, and we'll get started with that. But actually, before we get into the what from the marketing standpoint side of things, want to let you know a little bit more about what we do with our implementation program, right? So we try to give you out all this information here right now to help you get started in some quality, in some facet, right? Just get started in pulling a list, get started in doing some marketing, whatever it is, get the phones to ring, get going, right? And you can do that from this information we're giving you out that's free. Or if you're just starting right now, or if, let's say you're on this call and you're already, doing deals and stuff like that, we give out some great information that you can use to take your business to the next level. It's just those little nuggets along the way that can just be so huge. So, but we have an implementation program that we help people get a clear pathway of where they're trying to go, what they're trying to get to, identify where they're at, and try to help them get where they want to go. Because if you're not clear on that, it's like getting in a boat and saying, well, I'm just going to go somewhere, I'm just going to get in this boat and going to drive, and maybe I'll get to my destination that I think I want to go to. It's all about that clear direction and that clear pathway to get there, and eliminating all the clutter, right? So Brian is really good at helping people eliminate the clutter and put away the distractions and get to the point of taking action and then sticking to those action plans. So we've got an implementation program. Right now, we've been inundated with calls about it, and we're just trying to go through and talk to everybody to see who's a good fit. But if you are interested in it, I'm going to go ahead and post a link, and then we'll get to point number 3. Brian, if there's anything you want to say while I'm typing this here, feel free about the implementation program.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you said, our goal is essentially to give you a very clear action plan so you know what you're doing. So we bring people on, we mentor them, depending upon where you're at in the business. So we work with a lot of people that are new investors that are just kind of looking to get started and need that action plan and know what to do. We also work with a lot of experienced investors that are looking to take their business to the next level and, create good systems and help kind of automate and scale. So depending on where you're at, if you're interested in getting some help and just kind of moving to the next level, go check out that link that Alex posted, and you can set up a call with one of us. We'll talk about your business, see if we think that there's some ways that we can help you out. We'll give you some good, actionable information right there on the call. And then if we decide that maybe a good fit to work together, we'll kind of talk more about that. But it's a great program for anybody kind of, that's just looking to take their business to next level or even just get started, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Let's get to point number 3, and that is the what, right? There's so many different things out there that you can do, right? You can do mail, you can cold call, you can do ringless voicemails, you can set up online marketing, all this kind of stuff, right? So a big roadblock is people have all these different options and they don't know what to do. They get that paralysis of analysis, right? And it happens to the best of us. I sometimes, when I'm looking at doing something newer marketing wise, I'm like, oh man, all these decisions, just I don't want to do anything, right? It's called decision fatigue. And believe me, when you're doing new construction like I am as well, oh my goodness, the decisions are crazy. And you can be like, I'm just going to put it off and not do anything, right? So we try to give people that clear direction on the what on the marketing side. And there really is no magic answer to the marketing side of what to do. But what you really have to identify is where you are at in your own business, right? So identify, number 1, what are your resources? Do you have a bunch of money to just start opening up the floodgates and mailing as many people as possible? Do you have a smaller budget? And then in that case, you may have to go along the route of smaller niche list type thing. You got to identify where that is, and then you have to work with what you have. I see a lot of people that are like, oh man, I'm not going to get started because I don't have any money to throw towards marketing, or I'm not going to get this going because this whole marketing thing is overwhelming. But number 1, identify where you are at. So you either have money or you have time, right? Those are the 2 things there. And figuring out what that is for you is going to be huge, so you can take the proper action steps from there. So one thing everybody can do, and I recommend this to everybody who's just getting started with this and you don't have a lot of money for marketing, is try to find those niche lists within your market that a lot of list providers that are out there don't have access to, or are not able to get them in a refreshed kind of fashion where everybody is, ordering these lists and then they get them in and all that kind of thing. But if you're the first one to get down there to, let's say, like the probate office, or you're the first one to get down there for get down there for tax delinquent type stuff or code violations. Wow. Okay. Somebody's saying the link does not work. So let's see here. Let's make sure that we get that fixed for you guys. But using that priority method of getting down there to get to those records and things like that, anybody can do that, right? You just have to have the desire and the willingness to go do it, or it's just not going to happen. You just got to make it happen. You make time for it. It's like exercise, right? You either make time for exercise or you don't. And if you don't exercise, well, then it's not going to happen, right? So with this, you either make time for it or you don't. And it's that simple. Either that or you start spending money on marketing and things like that to get things moving for you. So I'm gonna try to fix this link here, Brian. You can continue on my on the pathway there on the what.
Yeah. What you said about you either have time or money, that is the most important thing to remember when it comes to marketing, because you have options for either. So when you're first starting out, you probably don't have as much marketing money set aside to do things like direct mail or to do some of those other things. But direct mail doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive. What we target on is very, very specific things. So we want to really niche down and narrow down exactly what we want. So you don't have to look at direct mail as something that's completely unreachable and unattainable until you have a lot of money. Some of these smaller lists you can do, like probate or layering some of those lists together, you can still apply direct mail principles to that and send that mail out, but you're just not sending out 15,000 a week. So if you have more time, some of the things like Alex said, probates or tax delinquent, those smaller lists like that, you can actually pick up the phone and call those people. You can do a little bit of research on your own, try to find some phone numbers. You can go on Craigslist, you can go on Zillow for sale by owners. If you have, less money, but a little bit more time, that's the stuff you have to grind away on. It's not going to be fun, right in the beginning, but if you get a couple of, your first couple of deals from, calling people and just doing Craigslist and doing those things, then you can start to reinvest some of those profits back into some of the other stuff that's a little bit easier to do, but it costs more money. So like you said, you have to kind of see where you're at, and then depending upon kind of your situation, that's going to tell you what kind of marketing you want to focus on, at least out of the gate. And then once you get a couple of deals coming in, it's not like you have to do those things forever. You can kind of reinvest your profits and do some direct mail and things like that. And that's one of the best ways to kind of get started, is just, like you said, look at where you're at, look at what you have available to you, focus on those things, and just be really consistent with it. If you're consistent with it and bringing in motivated seller leads, it's a numbers game. You'll find something. So that's kind of really the best place to start. Like you said, just pinpoint where you're at.
Yeah, it's like with cold calling is a really cool way of doing that, right? Because you can really say, okay, I'm going to make this many calls a day, or I'm going to make this many calls a week, whatever it is. And you set that goal and you stick to it. If you are able to pull out a list, you get a list, you get a bunch of numbers, and then you just sit there and say, okay, I've got a list here of 1,000 people. And let's say over the course of a month, that's like 30 calls a day, right? So you just sit there and you can say, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to make 30 calls a day off this list. And if it's a niche list, like a tax or probate or code violation, whatever it is, you are going to come across something. And it's your consistent action that's going to make that happen. And you know what? The only person that's responsible for that is you. That's the only person that's going to make you do that. And by holding yourself accountable to a goal like that, that's huge. I mean, I would challenge everybody to do that. If you're just trying to get started, or maybe you're trying to get, put your business in a spot where you're going to start focusing on smaller niche lists instead of bigger ones. Just put that goal in mind of, okay, 30 calls a day, 30 calls a day, 30 calls a day, and don't do anything until you meet that goal. And you'll be surprised what really can happen with that. Those small little decisions along the way turn into huge results. So keep that in mind. All right. I think our link is working now. But let's see here. Roadblock wise, typing. People need to be typing roadblocks. I see one here. Somebody, Matt here, says he's got a roadblock for him would be fear and money. Fear and money. So, Matt, let's address I'll put that back, your fear element, right? And I don't mean to be corny here or anything, but have you heard the acronym for fear? False evidence appearing real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. Fear is all upstairs, right? So you got to, number one, take it out of the emotional side of things and say, okay, what's the logic here? And you have to also approach it from the standpoint of what's the worst that could potentially happen. Are you afraid of sending out marketing? Are you afraid of talking to people? What is it that you're afraid of? So let's talk about it from a marketing standpoint. What's the worst thing that could potentially happen? The worst thing is somebody could call you and say, yes, I want to meet with you. Right? And that's actually a good thing. And that's something where you realize, okay, well, what's my problem? Why am I scared that somebody wants to meet with me? Well, I don't know what to say. Oh, okay. Well, let's address that. That means you need to start talking to people. This is a people business, right? So that means you need to find a way to talk to more people, right? And you can do that by simply going on to like Craigslist or something and calling up people on Craigslist and say, okay, I'm going to call everybody who's got a property for rent, and I'm going to ask them if they'd be interested in potentially selling it, right? It's free. You can sit there and make those calls all day long, and you could talk to people, and you're going to get angry people, and you're going to get people that think you're nuts, and you're going to get people that think you're a scam. You know what? All that is really good for you to have happen to you, right? Because we all need to be in a spot where we need to have our skin thickened up a little bit from people, right? If you're afraid of people giving you bad comments or afraid of what they think of you, well, that's something we need to work on as well. But fear, always ask that question: what is the worst thing that could happen, right? And that's a good way to address fear, or at least I would say. Do you have any comments on fear, Brian?
No, I totally agree. I mean, pinpointing exactly what your fear is, and then kind of looking at it logically, like you said, if it is, the marketing side, or if it is, he sent another comment in, I think, and it said that it was fear of having a return on his marketing. Yes. I mean, that's totally understandable. I mean, maybe don't focus on strategies that are, higher cost at first. If you're just starting out, focus on some of the other stuff, get a smaller list for direct mail if that's something that you want to do. But I mean, just like you said, when it comes to fear, you have to pinpoint exactly what it is. And like you said, see what is the worst thing that could happen. Now, when it comes to like talking to sellers, that was one of the things that I was scared of at first, because I was like, what if they like have questions I don't know how to answer? What if, like I say something wrong? The thing that I realized pretty quickly was that, they're in a situation to where they're just looking for some help. They're looking for somebody to talk to. They don't know any more about it than I do. They just, so if I say something that doesn't necessarily make sense or whatever, like they didn't know, because, they're not professionals either. So it's kind of one of those things that you'll just, by kind of jumping in and getting that experience, you'll see that it's really not that scary. And a lot of it, you just kind of build up in your mind. But, part of it is just throwing yourself out there.
Absolutely. I mean, you gotta get going with it. I mean, and then eventually what you do is you figure out, okay, well, this is not my strong point. And then you will eventually get to a point where you just find somebody who's good at it and put them in place. And, and now you got that's a business. Business is identifying roles and then putting the right people in those roles to make it happen, right? Quarterback is not a linebacker. A defensive end is not a quarterback. You just have to identify that role, find somebody to fill that role, and then eventually, you'll move past that. If that's like, talking to people, you're scared of it kind of thing. So, but like you said, what he mentioned about not getting a return on the marketing, start small. Start with a small list. I blast a subdivision of a hot area, hit everybody that has equity in that subdivision, something like that. And you'll be surprised what could happen. You might get one deal that you spent like $50 in marketing and you make $5,000. I mean, that's great. That's a huge return. So start small and then keep building on it, and then scale it that way is a really good way to approach that, about worrying about getting not getting a return. So anybody else have any question or roadblocks that you want us to address here? And we'll be glad to talk to them here about them here for the next few minutes. But if not, we will probably have to sign off here soon. But let us know what your roadblocks are, and we will address them. And again, if you are just joining us or you've been on the line, check us out at reiaccelerator.com/mentor, reiaccelerator.com/mentor. And we'll be glad to schedule a strategy session with you and see if it's something that's a fit. All right. Alyssa Haskins says, Brian Haskins. Yeah. That's a good one. It's your long lost sister, Brian.
There you go.
All right. Here's a classic one. Sammy says, needing money during the closing of a deal. You want to take that one?
Sure. So that's a really good question. It's a common question. That's a roadblock that, we probably need to devote an entire, video on. But essentially, when it comes to wholesaling, some of the most basic deals are assignments. So if you can assign your contract over to a buyer, then you don't necessarily need funds for a deal. Now, if it's a situation to where you have to close on it, or if you're doing a double closing or something like that, when it comes to funding, there's a lot of options now that are a lot easier than it was a few years ago. There's things called transactional funding, so very short-term funding. You can pretty much find transactional funding online. You can go to your local group, like your local
message me.
There you go. Message Alex. Exactly. It's much easier nowadays to find money, but if you're thinking that you have to have funds available to get started wholesaling, in most cases you don't. You can very easily assign a contract over to your end buyer, and whenever you do that, they are basically closing on the property, so there's no funds really needed for you. So hopefully that is kind of what you were asking about. If not, maybe kind of clarify that. But there are options out there for people that want to get started today that don't have funding lined up, because you can assign the contract. But it is easier nowadays to find funding, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, the side of when you're assigning a contract, you're just selling your contract. So there's no need to bring funds to the table for that kind of thing. If you're doing a double closing, that's something as simple as a transactional fund. And like I said, if you have a real deal, a real actual deal with a buyer and a contract with the seller and a contract with the buyer, you let me know, and I can definitely take care of that for you on the transactional side. So problem solved. Both sides.
There you go.
All right, let's see here. Mary Colburn says, roadblock, competitive market, or market super competitive, needing to get listing quicker. So are you talking about from a realtor standpoint, Mary? I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but the super competitive thing, I mean, we all can relate to that. When the market gets super competitive, I mean, it's a challenge, maybe not necessarily a roadblock that's like stopping you, but unless you feel like you don't want to take action because of competition. But here's the thing. Don't be afraid of competition, right? Because isn't it funny? You always see, like, whenever there's a Home Depot, Brian, what do you see down the street from there?
A Lowe's. There you go.
And these are billion-dollar companies, right? And why in the world would they put a Lowe's right next to a Home Depot, right? Because they bounce off each other and they send each other. It works together, right? So a good way to look at that is if there's competition, that means it's working. And if you're able to get into the game, business is going to come to you. You just need to get into the game and get better. Do things better. Find something in your business, some kind of a niche, and just do it better than your competition, because we all can't do everything better, right? There's room for everybody to do at least one thing better, and maybe that'll be your little niche that works for you. Let's see.
One of the easiest things that you can do to be better than your competition is follow up. A lot of people are, you just get busy, maybe they're not that good at being organized or something like that, and you lose out on deals and follow up. So that's one easy thing that you could do, is just be consistent with your follow-up.
Absolutely. So mahalo, she says. That probably means thank you in Hawaiian, right? Malik says, my main roadblock is consistent marketing and how to budget out for it. Well, Brian, I know you're a real big numbers guy and everything. So what would be a good way to consistently budget, or a simple way to set up a budget for marketing? How would you handle that?
Well, I think this goes back to exactly what you said earlier when it comes to the marketing side of things. You have to decide kind of where you're at and what your situation is. What do you have available to you? Do you have available enough funds to start with a small direct mail list? Or if not, then you need to focus on something else that's going to be a little bit more affordable, cold calling or something like that. So you decide kind of what you think your budget is. I mean, a realistic budget for getting started with direct mail, you can get started with as little as $500 a month, as long as you're targeting a very specific list and a good quality list, that you could do. So if you have that much money, that is something that you could do. And if that's the case, then you need to essentially just set that money aside and then start the marketing. Go ahead and get it scheduled, get your mailers going. If you don't have that much money, then you need to look at some other options. Would cold calling be a good option for you? Would, ringless voicemail? What are some of the other different things that you could be doing? And then essentially just putting a plan together. Like you said, if you're going to be cold calling, put that goal together of 30 people a day or 15 people a day, whatever you have time for. That would be, the best thing you can do, is just being consistent, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, setting up a plan is just something as simply as, number one, you have to identify your universe, right? What I refer to as a universe, meaning what's this crowd that you're trying to market to, right? And then you simply break it down into a daily amount if it's a cold calling thing, or if it's a direct mail thing. You can say, okay, I have 5,000 people, right? And I want to mail these 5,000 people consistently over the next 6 months, let's say. Well, that means that, actually, let's make it bigger. Let's say 10,000, let's say 20,000 people over the next 6 months, right? You simply break it down and say, okay, I have 6 months, I have 20,000 people. How do I get to all these people in an even fashion, right? So if I was to say, okay, I've got, say, 20,000 people, and I'm going to divide that up over 6 months. Well, that would mean 3,300 people a month, right? So you could do it like that, and you can say, okay, well, 3,300 a month, that fits my budget. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I want to hit these people every 45 days, so I want to get through this list a little bit quicker, right? So then you say, okay, well, I want to break this down, and over 20,000 people, I want to double that. So that means I'm going to be mailing out 6,000 pieces a month or let's see here, actually 3,300 times 2 would be 6,600. 20,000 divided by 6 is the 3,300 to get them once a month. But if you want to get through it sooner, you're going to have to break that down into 3. So yeah, it would be 6,000 pieces a month to get through it for 3 months. So you need to identify that and then simply break it out, and that will meet whatever your goal you're trying to meet. Whatever it is, just try to get it either on paper or get it something on your computer so that you can stick to it. You can use a company like Yellow Letter HQ, and you can say, okay, I want to break this down like this, and they'll break it down for you and they'll send it out. Whether you remember or not, they'll be like, okay, time to send the next one. Let's do it. And it'll be, oh, okay, cool. Great. So just whatever you do, just get it written, get it put into some kind of form or fashion that you're going to stick to, because if you don't stick to it, it's not going to work. So stay consistent with it, and it'll definitely pay off. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it here. I appreciate you joining me, Brian, and appreciate everybody who's been on this line here. And let us know what your roadblocks are. If you're watching this and it's a replay, comment what your roadblocks are so that we can address them. If you're needing help in your business, check out reiaccelerator.com/mentor. I got the link down in the comments below as well. And we'll be glad to schedule a strategy session with you and see if it's a good fit. So for now, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks.